anything that you wish to say?
No, ma'am. I thank you for your time and everything.
On his way out, Matthews shook his attorney's hand and chuckled. That's hard to believe considering the judge had just handed him a life sentence.
When handed a life sentence, some prisoners cry, some scream, and some just remain mute. But not this man. 43-year-old Lewis Matthews was captured on camera chuckling and shaking the hand of his lawyer after being handed a life sentence for pouring caustic bleach onto a girl he molested. 3:30 a.m. on April 13th, 2019. The daughter of Lewis's girlfriend was sleeping on the floor of her mother's living room when Lewis came downstairs and saw her. He then woke up her and molested her. The girl's mother, who was fast asleep, heard her daughter's screams from the living room and came downstairs to meet Lewis committing the inhumane act. In shock, she immediately grabbed her phone and dialed 911. In the heat of the moment, Lewis grabbed the girl with her clothes and drove her out of the house to a nearby gas station. When they got there, he took the girl into the convenience store and ordered her to go wait for him inside the bathroom. He then grabbed Clorox caustic bleach from the stall, went into the bathroom, forced the girl, and poured the bleach to wipe off any traces of his DNA. He threw the underwear in a dumpster behind the store, but unlucky for Lewis, traces of his DNA were still found on the other clothes she had on. No one can possibly imagine the trauma he must have left this little girl. Seeing someone she once took as a father figure do that to her must have been unbearable. Neither the mother nor the girl went to court for Lewis's hearing, and thankfully, he'll be spending the rest of his days behind bars. Ronnie ONeill.
I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
It's one thing to plead guilty to child molestation charges, but it's another to openly admit to the court and the jury that you're not sorry for the crime. March 18th, 2018, in Riverview, Florida, 29-year-old Ronnie ONeill fatally shot his ex-girlfriend, Kenyatta Barron, before molesting their daughter, Ronnie ONeill, and hacking her to death with an axe. At 11:43 p.m. sharp, the police sheriff department received a 911 call from a woman who seemed to be in severe pain. We can't say the police neglected the call, but it wasn't until 8 minutes later when Ronnie himself called back that they took action. Ronnie's an African American, and over his phone call with the police, he claimed to have been attacked by white demons, making his girlfriend Kenyatta try to kill him. Ronnie then gave the cops his address, and at 11:49 p.m., roughly a minute after his call, the police arrived at his apartment. When they got there, they found Kenyatta lying unconscious in her yard, their daughter hacked to death, and Ronnie's 8-year-old son stabbed with a knife while losing a lot of blood. Ronnie butchered his entire family and then set their house on fire. It was a complete shit show. However, Ronnie resisted and had to be tasered multiple times before being handcuffed and arrested. And after more than 3 years at the Hillsborough County Jail, Ronnie was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted first-degree murder, 2 counts of aggravated child abuse, 1 count of arson, and 1 count of resisting a law enforcement officer. He was given 3 consecutive life sentences, plus 90 years. It was clear he would never see the light of day again, but the case and Ronnie's unremorseful acts distressed the judge so much that she had to tell Ronnie to his face what kind of a man he was.
19 years I've been at this job. I've seen human beings killed at the hands of others in every way imaginable. This is the worst case I have ever seen as far as the facts.
Christopher Elwell. That was Josiah Davis headbutting a 2-time sex offender, Christopher Elwell, for touching a girl. Between June 24th and June 25th, 2018, Elwell was at a Mineral Park residence in Dover where he molested the girl. Back in January 2008, he was also convicted of performing sexual acts with a girl. He was released a few years later for completing a sex offenders rehabilitation program while incarcerated. But a decade later, Christopher committed the treacherous act yet again and also failed to register himself as a sex offender. Now, the meat of this story came after Elwell was handed his sentence of 15 years imprisonment and was led to the benches in the back of the courtroom. As he took a seat, he was headbutted twice by Josiah Davis, who was sitting on the same bench. Davis was a pretrial inmate at the Stratford County House of Corrections who was scheduled to appear in court for his own hearing. Both Elwell and Davis had their hands and feet shackled, but that didn't stop Davis. He hit Elwell twice below the jaw before he was pushed off by the Stratford County Deputy Sheriff. What's really interesting here is that these 2 men hadn't met each other before. However, Davis himself didn't go unpunished for that crime. He was handed an additional 3-year sentence for the assault, while Elwell was given an additional sentence after investigations discovered that he had brutally assaulted his cellmate, Matthew Melvin, a few days before his court hearing. There's a lot of stuff that's going on between these two which may sound confusing, but at least they're stuck behind bars now. Michael Sykes.
I sentence you to 25 years to life on that charge. I now order that the sentences I am imposing today on counts 2, 3, and 4 run.
Michael Sykes is a child-murdering monster. He was in a relationship with a woman named Rebecca Cutler, who had a child with Sykes and 2 other children with another man. Now, in September 2016, Michael got jealous after finding out that Rebecca had been texting another man and proceeded to attack her outside the Ramada Inn Hotel on Staten Island, New York. The hotel CCTV caught the couple and their 3 children going into the hotel on September 10, 2016. Then once they got into their room, Sykes went on a bloody killing rampage. He stabbed Rebecca more than 40 times, killing her in front of her children. And when he saw what he had done, he grabbed Rebecca's daughter and also grabbed his biological daughter, stabbing them both at least 5 times till they died. Rebecca's 3rd child tried putting up a fight with Sykes, and while he was overpowering her, he stabbed her more than 11 times in the process. Once he was done, he ran away from the hotel room, leaving Rebecca and her daughters to die from internal bleeding throughout the course of the night. The next morning, a housekeeper walked into the room to see the bloody scene and immediately called an ambulance. Only one of the children survived by a miracle. Sykes was caught 3 days later and taken to prison. But that's just one part of the story. At his first trial, Sykes claimed that Rebecca was psychotic and attacked the children herself, saying that he stabbed her to death in self-defense. A jury convicted him of second-degree murder over the death, but still had their doubts as to whether or not he did kill the children. However, since one of the children did survive, prosecutors were looking to bring her down to testify against him, but Sykes tried to prevent this by attempting to assassinate this child for a second time. For this, he was handed the max sentence of life imprisonment. But what caught everyone's attention is that as the judge read out Sykes' sentence, he just sat there in silence and looked away like he wasn't bothered. John Acklin.
I'm finally happy that today I'm able to seek justice for what I've been. And I hope that he's sentenced to the rest of his life in prison because he should never be let out to harm any other children.
56-year-old John Acklin was sentenced to 335 years in prison on 16 counts of sexually molesting 2 children. The acts happened between December 2004 and March 2006 in Livingston. The exact detail of who these girls are or how exactly John went about these evil deeds weren't disclosed. However, Acklin was convicted by a Columbia County jury on August 9, 2019, on 1 count of sexual conduct against a child, 10 counts of criminal sexual acts, 1 count of aggravated sexual abuse in the 1st degree, and 4 counts of aggravated sexual abuse in the 2nd degree. And after reports were made, Acklin moved to Texas as a fugitive before he was finally caught. Acklin was taken into custody in Texas on October 25, 2018, and extradited to New York on November 8th of the same year. But the highlight of his sentencing was that the victims were able to confront them right in his face, and all John could do was look down and stare into thin air. In the press release, the district attorney praised the survivors who,
the victims in this case can stand as an example to other victims everywhere that justice can be found years later.
Michael James Peach.
I can only pray for forgiveness and that I alone, no matter what sentence I get, I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life anyway.
If there were some kind of world record for sex offenders, this man would be at the top of that list. Michael Peach is a 3-time serial sex offender and molester. So don't be fooled by that silly pity face he wore in that clip. This man's a monster. Michael Peach's obsession began in '96 when he was first convicted of sexually molesting a boy. Then in 1997, Peach was convicted a second time on fresh charges related to this same boy. However, Peach seemed sorry for his actions, and his sentence was reduced, giving him an early release from prison a few years later. Fast forward to his latest victim, who he met while working at a medical building company, where the victim's mother also worked. Peach used his position to become friendly with the victim, while the boy's mother was unaware that Peach was a sex offender. And as he got close to that boy, he performed sexual acts on him while recording. This happened for a long time, until the boy was fed up and reported Mr. Peach to his mom. After the mother reported that to the police, Peach broke into their home with a stun gun and attempted to kill the child. child. The mother hid the boy upstairs while trying to block Peach from getting to him, but in the process, he used the stun gun repeatedly on her. The woman had another boy who was fast enough to call his father to come save him. Thankfully, the man lived only a few blocks away, so he was quick to come down and stop Peach from murdering his entire family. After Peach left the house, he was chased by the cops down the neighborhood before he intentionally crashed his car into a wooden area to kill himself. Unlucky for him, he didn't die, so he took out a hunting knife, slit his throat, and stabbed himself in the chest. Peach was rushed to the hospital where he remained in surgery for several days, guarded by an armed officer, and then once he recovered, he was taken to jail. During his trial, the judge who presided over the case was disgusted by how evil this man was. Before reading his final verdict, he had this to say: "You knew you were caught being a sexual predator for the third time, so you premeditated a diabolical attack on a young mother and her children in order to cover up your heinous, awful misdeeds. You gathered up a rope, duct tape, a knife, a stun gun, a ski mask, and put together your own special murder backpack. You then slithered over during the early morning hours to the victim's home to carry out your evil plans. Mr. Peach, you made a statement to the police that you were a monster. This court wholly agrees with you that you are a monster." Peach was given 45 years to life imprisonment. Many say he deserved the death penalty. Alfredo Lopez Cruz.
I am very sorry. I asked for an opportunity.
He might be shedding tears for his crimes, but this man deserves no empathy. June 19th, 2005, Alfredo kidnapped and sexually abused a girl in Hamilton, Ohio. The girl was living with her grandmother and father before deciding to take her bike out for a run. During that bike run, she met a man with a mole on his lip and a bird tattoo on his shoulder, who was sitting at a picnic table drinking beer. The man summoned her over with a silent gesture, and once she got there, he picked her up, bike and all, and carried her into his house. Once they were inside, Alfredo molested her in the worst imaginable way. But once he was done and had fallen asleep, the girl managed to run away naked back to her home. Once she got there, her father asked what had happened, and she described the entire event to him. In anger, he grabbed his gun and headed straight for Lopez's house, while her grandma called the police. But before the girl's father got there, Lopez had fled from his home back to Mexico. He was later caught and extradited to the U.S., where he was handed 3 life sentences. Edwin Wren.
I was sitting on the couch about to watch a movie, and I heard a voice in my head telling me to do something to her.
Take a deep look at this man, because that right there is the face of a very, very evil human. Edwin was convicted of sexually abusing a baby on October 27th, 2011. Wren had been living with the baby's mom and her boyfriend in a house near New Smyrna Beach. But on that fateful day, the boyfriend wasn't around. The mother had gone out to get groceries, and Wren said he had thoughts in his head and he just blacked out. When he opened his eyes, he saw blood everywhere and was scared. He then ran to a neighbor's house to tell him what had happened. The neighbor saw the child brutally bleeding, so she took the child and called the cops on Wren. In fear of what he had done, Wren ran out of the house, went through the woods, and hid in a Walmart toilet. That was exactly where the police found him 7 hours later, partially covered in blood and with no shirt on. He was arrested immediately. However, during his trial, Wren tried to play the insanity card. He stated in court that he was mentally unstable as a child and had been hospitalized 5 times between the ages of 6 and 12, also cutting himself regularly to make his depression go away. However, when a doctor was called to critically examine him, they discovered that Wren wasn't insane, wasn't depressed, and God knows what the heck got into him. This girl suffered so many internal broken bones and ligaments that she was rushed to get reconstructive surgery immediately. A few people close to the child's family suggested that Wren should have been given the death penalty, but the judge sentenced him to life imprisonment. Arthur Leon Vidishek.
We'll be back. We'll be back. You hear me? We'll be back.
That was Arthur Leon Vidishek threatening the mothers of his victims after being handed a 560-year sentence for multiple charges of child Station. Arthur's described as America's most wanted because this man is like no other sex offender mentioned in the video so far. He began his criminal life as a child molester back in the year 1990. He targeted financially struggling single mothers, helping them with their material items and showering their sons with gifts and attention. In turn, Arthur would get close to these boys and sexually molest them. Arthur did this over a 15-year span, molesting at least 8 boys. Arthur met some of his victims online, and the others he was able to manipulate their mothers into allowing him to take their children to his own home.
I had to live with it day to day. Can't ride in a Mustang to this day. I can barely drink tea to this day because it reminds me of the things that this man did to me.
Arthur would be arrested in Dallas, Texas back in November 2006 after being on the run for more than a year and a half. During his court hearing, Arthur wasn't repentant of his crimes and wasn't sorry. He even proclaimed himself the nicest person in the world. We have no words. And Larry Nassar.
Would you give me 1 minute? You know that I can't do that. That's not how our legal system works.
That right there was the angry father of 3 of Nassar's victims. Out of the 200 plus he sexually molested. Larry was born on August 16, 1963, and is an American molester, rapist, and former sports medicine osteopathic physician. The road to becoming such an inhumane child molester and sex offender began at the age of 15 when he worked as a student athletic trainer for the women's gymnastics team at North Farmington High School on the recommendation of his older brother Mike, who was an athletic trainer at the school. Then by 1993, Nassar graduated as a doctor of osteopathic medicine, and that's exactly when his sexual assault on women began. For 18 years, he was the team doctor of the United States Women's National Gymnastics Team, where he used his position to exploit and sexually assault a total of 265 women and girls, most of whom were Olympic and U.S. women's gymnasts. Despite different women coming out to talk about how they had been molested by this man, the FBI refused to launch an investigation, and while these women continued to speak up, more women were falling victim to Nassar's insane crimes. However, it all came to an end on November 22, 2016, when Nassar was indicted on several state charges of sexual assault from 1998 to 2005. Nassar allegedly assaulted this victim sexually. He was also charged with 22 counts of first-degree criminal sexual conduct with minors, 15 in Ingham County and 7 in neighboring Eaton County. And to add the cherry on top, the FBI found more than 37,000 images of pornography and a video of Nassar molesting girls in his home. 37,000. Like, how sick do you actually have to be?
You, Larry, will have no choice but to sit in prison and wait to die.
On January 24, 2018, Judge Rosemarie Aguilina of Ingham County sentenced Nassar to a maximum of 175 years in prison for the sexual assault of minors.
Because, sir, you do not deserve to walk outside of a prison ever again.
Many of the victims felt that sentence was too short, but Larry is currently fighting for his life in prison. On July 9, 2023, Nassar was stabbed by another inmate who was upset by a lewd comment he made about girls while they were watching the Wimbledon Championship on TV. He was stabbed twice in the neck, 6 times in the chest, twice in the back, and suffered a collapsed lung. He survived the attack and is still alive, but the question is, for how long?